Now this is going to be an interesting video for you today. A topic that I don't believe I've talked about before. Or at least I haven't made a topic with a similar title to this one. But I recently saw a few days ago that someone mentioned this in the comments. And as you know, I do read your comments every day. I really appreciate everything that my viewers have to say. And of course, your comments, they inspire me a lot of times as well. Even though now I've been doing this for 6.5 years, or well, I've been studying about narcissism for 6.5 years. I've been doing this channel for just over 6 years. But even though I've been doing it for such a long time, I'm still inspired every time when I read your comments. And sometimes there could be people who are just finding out about these videos, and they can give me something new to think about. So it just shows that you can learn things from other people, even once you've become an expert in your field. You can still learn things even from your own students. And yeah, there was one particular comment that stood out to me and inspired me to make this video for you today, of how the narcissist already knows how it ends up for them. Because I can tell you, they do know. And that's the whole point of why they manipulate you in the beginning. They manipulate your emotions, they give you a false character. They try to orchestrate the situation. And just think about that for a moment, because why do you need to orchestrate a situation if you're confident in how things are going to go? They do it because they want to plan and coordinate the elements of a situation so that they can then produce their desired effect, so that things can go their way instead of the way that things may naturally play out. And why wouldn't things play out in their way without them having to intervene, without them having to manipulate you and give you a false character, deceive you, lie to you, and future fake you? Why wouldn't things play out their way without them having to do all of that? And of course, the reason why, it would have to be that you're too good for them and they're not deserving of you. They're not good enough for you. And also it could be because they have ulterior motives. They have a really bad agenda that they're not disclosing to you. And typically, when you have this ill will towards someone, things aren't going to turn out very well. And it's no surprise that that's often what we see in narcissistic relationships. When they come in thinking they're going to exploit you, and then things never work out for them anyway. Although many of us, we could be fooled. Before we find out about this information, we could think that it does look like they're riding off into the sunset, because that's what they want you to think. But yeah, they know exactly how it all ends up for them. And it's not just at the beginning. It's not that they manipulate you, they deceive you, and then things work out in their favor. Even then, it still doesn't work out that way. And that's why it's only a certain amount of time until they then begin devaluing you. they start putting you down, because then you're starting to figure out that, hold on a minute, you have more value to give than they do. You're the one who is sustaining the relationship. You're the glue that holds it all together. The problem is that by you holding it together, you're revealing what's underneath their mask. So then they want to dissolve the glue. They want to dissolve you. And even from the devaluation phase onwards, they typically have a new source already lined up that you may be unaware of. And another thing they do from the devaluation phase onwards is they're already smearing your name from that point on. And they could be doing this in front of you, or they could be doing it behind your back. But trust and believe that they are doing it. And they're typically doing a very good job at it as well, because they've got a lot of practice. They've done it before. So they know exactly what they're doing when they're grooming the new source and they're smearing your name, preparing for when you finally wake up, or for when they've used you for all that you've got and then they're ready to get rid of you. Because they already know how things are going to end for them. So they've got to have their exit plan. They've got to be ready to leave before it all blows up in their face. But no matter how prepared they may be, a lot of times that's exactly what does happen to them. Especially now with these videos, with all of this information. It's not so easy for them to do the things that they used to do. To treat people the way that they used to treat them. And of course, it's because people like me are making these videos, and we're sick of it. We're sick of unsuspecting people being taken advantage of. We recognize that they deserve better treatment than that. We recognize that they deserve someone who's going to put in at least a similar amount to what the other person is putting into it. Because that's just how things should be. It should be fair. It should be balanced. That's how relationships work. It can't just be one person doing all of it. And they may also have an awareness of that as well. That of course, since they're not really good enough to be in a relationship with you, of course at some point it's going to fall apart. And especially when they see things going bad for you because they're constantly devaluing and degrading you, then they really start putting you down to stop you from looking at them and how they're treating you. Because they want you to blame yourself. They don't want you to wake up and realize that this is a result of their neglect. Because that's the thing, when you're in a relationship, you're giving all of your time, energy and effort to this person, you're taking care of them, but they're not taking care of you. So who is taking care of you? And they may blame you, they may say you're not taking proper care of yourself, because maybe while you're with a narcissist, you might have a taste for junk food. You might like sugary foods, fatty foods. You might start smoking again, drinking alcohol, maybe even using drugs, smoking cannabis. And you may notice that I'm quite relaxed talking about this, because this is actually still a normal part of the relationship with a narcissist. It's typically what will happen with the victim. Is that, yes, the victim will degrade and get involved in the wrong things. Things that they might not normally do, things that are out of character for them. So you may not have smoked for 10 years, And then you get involved with a narcissist and they put you down, they crush you mentally and emotionally, and then you're struggling to cope because you're giving in everything you have to take care of them, and you can't even take care of yourself because they're constantly there, they always need you, they always got to have your attention on them. So what's taking care of you? If they're not taking care of you and you don't have the time, energy, money or resources to take care of yourself, then what is sustaining you? And that's how naturally you will degrade, and you may seek out unhealthy coping strategies. And do not blame yourself for that. Do not let them shame you, because honestly, so much stress dealing with a narcissist, and honestly, I don't blame you. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying that it's the right thing to do for you to start smoking again, drinking alcohol. Of course, I advise against that, especially as someone who doesn't smoke and hasn't drank alcohol for over 6 years. So I'm definitely not encouraging anyone to do that. But honestly, I do understand. And what I would say is that if you do seek out an unhealthy coping strategy, make sure that it is legal. Don't get involved in anything that's against the law, such as using cannabis, if it's not legal in your area. Because remember, they can use that against you. And that's typically what they will do. Remember, for them, it's all about feeling important, feeling powerful and in control. They have a fragile, dysfunctional ego. And because of that, they make awful leaders because everything's just running off of their emotions. They're using people and things to regulate themselves because they can't generate their own energy from within. So for that reason, they have to disempower you. They have to break you down mentally and emotionally. They have to crush you, your ego, and leave you feeling unimportant, to where you're struggling to cope. And that's how they just end up blowing things up. And from my personal experience, because I'd like to bring that in for this part, it seems as though at some level, yes, they know what they're doing. They do recognize that their actions affect you. Maybe the full-blown NPDs who have no self-awareness at all, they actually may not see it. In all honesty, they may not know. If they have the full mental illness, they may not be consciously aware that what they're doing when they're insulting you, when they're putting you down, that's then causing you to struggle to sustain the relationship and to take care of them. I hate to say it, but it's true. The full-blown NPDs, they actually may not be consciously aware of that at all. And Sam Vaknin has mentioned himself in his videos that they are gaslighting themselves. The full-blown narcissist, they're not really gaslighting you. They're gaslighting themselves to the point where they genuinely believe in everything that they say they believe in. And that's how it seems that there's just no getting through to them. But most of you, and you may not like me saying that, it may seem quite invalidating, but I'm going to say it anyway because it is the truth. most of you likely are not dealing with the full-blown NPD. I'm sure you're dealing with someone who's narcissistic, who has at least a few traits. Someone who's very difficult, maladaptive, self-absorbed, or they lack empathy, they're exploitative. But it doesn't mean that they have the full mental illness. And either way, that doesn't justify what they do. It doesn't invalidate your experience, although it may cause you to feel invalidated by hearing that, but that is the truth. But regardless of that, that means that many of you are dealing with a person who does know. They do know. They can make the association. They can see the link that when they do something, it affects you in a certain way. It brings you down, it degrades you, it affects you. But then some of them, some of the narcissistic people that you may be dealing with, they may also have the selective amnesia. So they may just want to forget about it because they want to remain disconnected from themselves. So they disown anything bad about themselves, including their own actions and behaviors, to the point where they can do something and just lie about it, act like they didn't do that. They're not the cause of it. And honestly, it gets to a point where it's like you're in a situation with someone who always has to have the authority. They've always got to be in power and control over you, over your entire life, over everything that you do, everywhere you go, everyone you see. They've got to be in full control of all of that. And it really limits your thoughts, your perceptions, your behaviors, where you go. It limits all of that. And yet, in the end, they will still blame you. They will say that you're at fault. When it's like, how much free will, how much freedom did you have to make another choice, another decision? And essentially, many of you, when you look at it, as sad as it is, you know, there's people in prison in many countries in the world, and we're talking about murderers, rapists, child molesters, even serial killers, even people on death row. There's people in prisons like that who have more human rights, more legal rights, more respect than you do. And it's like, regardless what they say about you or how much they devalue you or smear you, no matter who you are that's watching this video, I really don't think that you're anywhere near as bad as any of those types of people. And yet you've got less rights. You get less respect. You get worse treatment. And yet, it's like it limits your thoughts, perceptions, behaviors. It limits what you do because they've got to have the power and control. And yet then they still blame you. It's as though in their minds they're like this invisible, unaccountable entity. I can do anything, but then somehow that's still you, as though you are them. Because of course, if you're blamed for their actions, the effects of their actions, what they cause, then essentially what they're doing, as I mentioned in past videos, they're disowning parts of themselves and assigning them to you. And then they're taking your innocence and assigning it to themselves. So it's like you switch personalities. And someone who doesn't know much about a narcissist, they could get on here and say, you know, you're a grown adult. You can think whatever you want to think. You're in control of your own mind, your own body, your own perceptions, your own actions and behaviors. You can do whatever you want to do. You've got full control, you've got free will, you've got freedom. Someone who doesn't know much about narcissism may get onto you and think that. But anyone who has been in a relationship with a narcissist will know that that is not the truth. When you deal with a narcissist, you don't have freedom. You don't have freedom of thought, of perception. They gaslight you. They will come at you again and again to forcefully make you doubt your own memory, perception, and sanity, until you feel like you're losing your mind and you lose control of your actions and behaviors. And there is this human behavior expert that I watch on YouTube a lot, and he mentioned in one of his videos that, I guess, people act in very strange ways when they're under a lot of pressure. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that. But it's not like as victims or the types of people who the narcissist can push or provoke us and then we just blame them and forget about it. We act like, you know, we don't feel bad about it. Actually, no. It dominates our minds. It dominates our lives. It causes us to feel a lot of shame. It causes us to feel like we're bad people. Even though they were the orchestrators of it, they are the master puppeteers, as they choose to be, as they position themselves to be. And of course, if you don't let them be that, then what happens to you? They devalue and degrade you even more. They smear your name. And they may even get you in trouble with the law. They will do anything to keep you down, to make you submit to them. And even while they have the authority, they have all of the power and control, they still blame you in the end. When it's like your options, your choices were severely restricted. And of course, that's then because of the lack of empathy. They can't put themselves in your shoes. It's like, what else are you supposed to do? You can't be autonomous or independent. You can't make your own decisions because all of that threatens them. You can't be you. Anytime that you try to be you, that's not really you, you're being fake, they discredit you. So, you don't really have many options, many choices or decisions when you're dealing with a narcissist. And essentially, whenever you're dealing with them, they've got to be the captain of the ship. They've got to be in full control. And even though they're the captain of the ship, then you would take full responsibility. You'd be like, all right, yes, I had a responsibility over that. That was my fault. Let me take care of it. Let me sort it out. But when you deal with narcissists, they create all of the problems because they have all of the power and control. And they won't let you have any authority in that. You have no authority, but then you're held accountable for everything. And even then, some of you, even though you had no power, you had no control over how anything turned out, you still just accept full accountability. And you try to make things better. And then they're still there stopping you from trying to fix all of the problems that they have created. It's absolute madness with them. It really is. there's just nothing that you can really do with them. And I really believe that they are aware of that. If we look at how they respond to certain situations, if we look at their behaviors, it's clear that they must know how it all ends up for them. And maybe that's why it's like from the very beginning they see you as something temporary. They've always got one foot in, one foot out. They're never fully invested in you. And yet, it's not that you're not valuable, because of course, why else would they target you? Why would they remain around you? Why would they take everything that they take from you and then even come back to take some more? So clearly you have a lot of value there, because they could have targeted someone else. They could exploit someone else instead of you. But they don't invest anything into you because they know that anything they're a part of is not going to succeed. It's not going to go well. Because otherwise, if they really believed that with them being a part of something, it's going to turn out well, then they would invest everything they have. If they're really that confident about it. So essentially they lack a lot of confidence in themselves, a lot of self-belief. They compensate for it with arrogance, overconfidence, but they're actually incompetent. But yeah, they have a fragile, dysfunctional ego. And that's why they've got to target your ego. Because of course, the more your ego is intact, the more important and self-empowered you feel. The more threatened their fragile ego feels. So that's why they then have to devalue and degrade you. And then even though essentially they're the cause of whatever happens after that, because they always have to be this constant and only source of influence in your life, they then blame you when everything falls apart. They have this external locus of control. They blame outside sources for their own circumstances that they have caused. And while they may have caused certain situations for us, we're still the ones who take accountability, and they're still the ones who are trying to hold us back. Because again, they already know how it all ends up for them. They already know that if they don't intervene, if they just leave you alone, things are going to get a lot better for you. I mean, think about it. Why would they come back? Why would they sabotage you? Why would they intervene? If they really thought that you were that bad, you were no good, that you caused all of the problems, then the best revenge, the worst punishment, is just to leave you to it. Just to leave you alone. Because then they know you're just going to go off and ruin your own life, like they do. But instead, no, what do? They come back, they sabotage you, they cause problems for you. And even before they leave, they try to destroy you. Because they know how things are going to go for you if they don't intervene. And of course, that's where they targeted you. That's where they seek out a source of supply. Because they know if they don't, things aren't going to go well for them. But regardless, even when they do that, it's not going to go well for them because they're manipulating you. They're using a false character. And that's why I say, if you want to punish a narcissist, if you want to get revenge, you don't have to do anything. Just don't intervene. Leave them to it. If you give them enough rope, they will hang themselves. With them, they have to constantly butt in. And they have to bring in their flying monkeys and get everyone else to do the same thing. Why? If you're no good, if you're such a bad person, if you caused all of the problems in the relationship, then why do they need to do that? What is the purpose of it? They wouldn't need to. The reason why they don't just let things pan out naturally is because they know if they did, things would work in your favor. Things would go very well for you. That's why they devalue you. That's why they lie to you and future fake to control you. That's why they steal from you. That's why they smear your name. That's why they sabotage you, triangulate you, gaslight you. This is why they do everything. It's because they know what will happen if they don't do those things. Otherwise, why do it? Why waste the energy, the time? What would be the point? Why not just not do anything? If they genuinely believe that you're that bad and things aren't going to go well for you, then why intervene? Why do anything at all? And that's when you should realize that that's the whole point. That's the whole purpose of it, is that they've got to do those things. If they don't, then they're going to look like the fools, because you're going to go off and things are going to go very well for you. Because yes, it must mean that they do recognize your value. They recognize that you are a wonderful person. You are so much better than them. You do have the tools, the qualities that you need to succeed. You were made to succeed. Well, as for them, what do they have to do? They have to be a parasite, a leech. They have to manipulate you, lie to you, future fake, cheat you, sabotage you. They have to do all of that. And even then, they still have to rely on an illusion. They still have to give you this mirage with the new supply. Because they're just no good. They're absolute garbage. They're just horrible people. And they're just not built to survive in anything. Or essentially, maybe that's all they can do, is survive. All they can do is get by. Because narcissists, they're constantly in survival mode. And they're just doing anything that they can to survive. And when a person is just trying to survive, they will do some crazy things. Many people will lie to you, they will con you. They will steal from you simply because they have no self-belief. Because they're just trying to get by and they don't know how to survive. And that's how people then end up doing those things. And that's really what they hate about you the most, is this ability that you have to sustain yourself. Because that's something that they can't do. They have to use you for their sustenance. And at the same time gaslight you because they know that makes them a piece of crap. If you have to use another person to keep yourself going, to keep you alive, then what does that say about you? But that's what they have to do. They have to drain the life out of you. Take anything that you have and then discard you and do the same thing to the next person, or come back and do it to you all over again. They got to get everything from you to the point where you can't even sustain yourself. Essentially, it's like they live their lives hanging off the edge of a cliff, while also holding a ball underwater in the hopes that it doesn't pop back up and hit them in the face. And that ball is their image. They're trying to hold on to their image. They don't want to be exposed. But yeah, things are not going to go well for them. There is no narcissist in this entire world who is happy and successful. There's no narcissist in this world who is satisfied. It doesn't exist. Anytime that you think you've seen one that it does exist, it's an illusion. They can't find any satisfaction in themselves or their own lives or in anything that they have. So what they're doing is they're getting you to filter everything through them so that they can live vicariously through you. They make you feel like you're missing out. They try and make you envious or jealous of something they have. So then they feel like they have something. It brings them some sort of fulfillment in the moment, and then they feel worse afterwards. Because they can't get any fulfillment from anything directly. How could they when they obtain things the wrong way? They cheat people, they lie to them, they deceive them. How could you be happy when you're doing things like that? And it's not that I don't want people or narcissists to be happy. Honestly, that would be the best thing for this world. If these narcissists could change and just be better people, and if they just learn to give back to the communities that they took things from, and to just contribute more and help people, serve people. If they just learn to do that, then they could finally find happiness and things would get a lot better in this world. So it's not that I'm bitter or that I'm vengeful and I'm just wishing that they're all going to be miserable for the rest of their lives. They are going to be miserable for the rest of their lives. They are. I can guarantee it. All of them. Now they may have moments, not of happiness or satisfaction, but just stay temporarily from their pain. And those moments are not even going to be real. Those moments appear to exist only when they are disconnected from themselves. So they have to live the rest of their lives in a dream world, living a lie. where they're just constantly trying to escape their own pain. They're trying to outrun their own void, which gobbles up anyone who gets too close to them. It's an absolute nightmare for them. They've always got so much on their mind, they're overthinking everything, constantly scanning the environment for threats. They're very anxious, stressed. This is why when you're around them, you begin to act the same way. You get around a narcissist and you become fearful, paranoid, hypersensitive, hyper-aware, stressed, anxious. You weren't that way before. You may have been calm, relaxed before you got involved with them, but you get around them and then you end up the same way. And just remember how you feel when you're in their presence. And remember that how a person treats you is a direct reflection of how they feel. And then realize that they feel that way every day. And they're going to feel that way every day until the day they die. And it's not going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse. And deep down, I believe that they know that. And that's why it's as they say, a desperate person will clutch at a straw, will reach for anything. And that's exactly what they do. And again, they reach for anyone or anything, and then they try to pull it down. But then after that, they may come back to you. They may try to get back in your good graces again, because as empaths, we are very rare. And initially, they may feel quite arrogant about going out there and finding someone else, because they think that if they got you, they can find something better. But it rarely works out that way for them, and even if it does, in some rare cases, what happens is they destroy it, just as they destroyed things with you. And it gets to a point, honestly, these narcissists, they've got a string of failed relationships. There's so many people in their past that they have destroyed. And well, they know that they were the cause of it, because it's like a person went down while they were with them. So then at some point, it's like the next one, they already know exactly what's going to happen, and they're already prepared for it. Whereas with myself, and I'm sure with many of you as well, I look back at relationships I've had with people, and honestly, while they were with me, they were the best that they had ever been. The happiest, the healthiest, with all of these ambitions for the future. And then within maybe 1 year after leaving me, or maybe a couple of years in some cases, everything went down. They lost all of their ambitions. They became very unhealthy, very unhappy. They didn't look so good anymore after they left me. While they were with me, they were great. And this is a pattern that I've noticed, because I know in myself, I have the awareness to know that I bring a lot of energy, a lot of love, a lot of light to any situation or environment that I am in. And I know that many of you do too. And when they no longer have that, when they no longer have that energy, that light in their lives, they begin to rot, they begin to decay. Because initially in the love bombing phase, when they seem so happy, like they're so full of energy, enthusiasm, and life, that's only because at that point, they haven't even drained you yet. So then they get in that full flavor, that full taste of your energy. And that's why the love bombing often feels so good. Because you've got all of this love, all of this light, and you're providing it to them, and you're not even aware of it, that you're giving it to them, and they're just reflecting it back to you. Yeah, you think that it's coming from them. Nala's resting on the bed here. It's quite late in the day for her to be taking a nap. Normally she has her routine where I go out after lunch, normally around 12 or 1 p.m. And then when I come back in the evening, around 6 or 7, open the door, then I can see she's yawning, she's just woken up. But yeah, I went out today. I went for a hike. And I was climbing up. And it was quite an intermediate hike as well. I had to climb with my hands and use rope. And then suddenly there was a big storm. It started raining heavily. And I'm in the middle of the hike. And I was completely soaked, my clothes, everything, from head to toe. Soaked all of my money, my passport. I had to dry it with a fan in the room. And it took me about 30 minutes, even while the storm was still going on. It took me 30 minutes to get out of the forest, get back onto the road, and then I had another hour walking back to the room. Because of course I already knew, even if I book a ride, who's going to let me into their car when my clothes are completely drenched? So I just walked it all the way back. 2 hours in a storm. And you could probably hear it in my voice now as well. Not really feeling too good, but I still went to the gym. But still, I don't regret that experience. It was an adventure. Standing in the jungle in a monsoon, a storm. It's a good memory. Life is meant to be an adventure. And of course it would get boring if everything's just good, perfect, positive every day. I do love nature. And sometimes a part of nature is to be drenched with rain when you least expect it. While you're hiking up a hill with a rope in the middle of a rainforest. And I actually took some videos as well, even during the storm, which I will be putting onto my Instagram stories after this video. So you could see that on there. If you'd like to see Narc Survivor getting soaked while trying to hike. You may have seen me getting wet already a few days ago in my recent live video when I was at the park. Yeah, if you don't know, my Instagram is Narc Survivor YouTube. If you want to follow me on there, and I will have the content put onto my stories, so you can see how my day went. But yeah, let's talk about this topic. Let me know your thoughts on it in the live chat. How the narcissist knows how it all ends up for them. What do you think about that? Do you think that's true? Or do you think they don't know? Remember, there is a difference between a full-blown NPD and someone who's just narcissistic. Many of the NPDs, they have no self-awareness at all. And they can do things to you and not realize that they're the cause of something because they're gaslighting themselves and they're in such denial. But yeah, let me know in the live chat. Let me know what you think about this topic. And let me know if you have any questions as well. I will read out your questions and respond to them. And also give me a thumbs up if you found this video helpful so far. What's this? Delary is saying he has binoculars in his car and the Ring camera is just to see me if I go outside. It's funny because he's still insecure. He thinks I can get out without triggering the camera. I'm not sure exactly about your situation there, Delary. But just knowing that there are binoculars and cameras involved, that doesn't sound too good. That sounds like someone who's very disconnected from themselves. And of course they would be, because typically when you're looking through a camera or through binoculars, you're observing something outside of you, so you're not so much connected to yourself and you're not connecting with that thing that you're observing. Because of course, if you're connected with someone who's connected to themselves, then you're also connected to yourself. But these narcissists, when they use binoculars and cameras, they're spying on you. It's a tool for them to disconnect from themselves, which makes them feel better. And that's how you will know that they actually use a lot of things to disconnect from themselves, to escape from reality, such as stalking, smear campaigns, video games, and pornography, shopping. gambling. They use all of these things as tools to disconnect from themselves. And as for me, if I'm to use any of those types of things, such as if I'm listening to music, it's going to be to help me connect more deeply to myself. However, one thing that I have observed from my own experience is that when we're watching movies, we do tend to disconnect from ourselves. And you may notice that when you go to the cinema, you watch a long movie, and then when you leave the movie theatre, it's like you've just forgotten about your life. Like you just had this moment of escape. And while you were watching the movie, you genuinely believed that it was real at the time. So I would say to be careful with watching a lot of movies, even television shows, because they can cause you to disconnect from yourself. However, if they're documentaries or videos such as this, talking about actual experiences that have happened in your life already, now this is going to help you to connect back to yourself. So you see how that works? Which means that videos and music, these types of things, they're not always bad, and it's not always just a form of escapism. Especially since when you deal with a narcissist, it's like this real world is a fantasy when you're dealing with them. And a means of escape for you may be music or watching documentaries or watching my videos. And that seems to be bringing you back to reality more than being around them. So it's not always cut and dry, and it's good to think about these things. Because what's very important is how it's affecting you. Is it making you feel better, or is it making you feel worse? And even fantasy isn't always bad. I mean, as Richard Brannon has mentioned in his videos, relationships are a fantasy. Amani asks, how is their survival mode? Can narcs even self-heal? That's the thing. I mean, when a person is always in survival mode, that's what's preventing them from healing. How can you heal when you're just getting by? If you're just surviving, then you're at risk. You're like prey. You're like you're thinking of yourself as a victim, and of course you have to move on from that in order to heal. From just surviving to then thriving. And of course it comes down to our basic needs and our emotional and mental health. These things are very important for us to then heal. I mean, just think about it. Even for us as victims and survivors, how can we even think about healing if we're having difficulty with our finances and you're worried about paying the bills, or you're worried about what you're going to eat? I mean, if you can't even meet your basic needs yet, you shouldn't even be thinking about healing. The first step is survival. our primal needs, and then we can move past that and then focus on healing. Focus on healing when you're in a safe and comfortable space. I mean, just think about it. If you're in the middle of a battlefield, if you're fighting in a war, and you're on the front line, there's all of these bullets flying back and forth, people are getting their limbs blown off, and you're just sitting there on the ground and trying to put a plaster on your leg so that it can heal. What's the point? What's the point in doing that when your leg could just get blown off because you're still on the battlefield? You're still in the middle of a war. So it doesn't make any sense. But be careful, because the narcissist will criticize you about these things, because remember, they lack self-awareness, they disconnect from themselves. So they'll criticize you and your coping strategies, and they'll make you feel like you're stuck, like you should move on, you should heal, or that you're angry, you're bitter, and that there's a problem with you. When it's like, how can you focus on healing when your basic needs aren't being met, your emotional needs aren't being met, your physical needs? I mean, these things have to be dealt with first. First you have to survive, and then you can focus on thriving. And of course, to get from surviving to then thriving, that's then the healing process. And it's the same thing with narcissists. The difference is, we want to go within, we want to attend to ourselves, we want to heal. They don't want us to heal. And they also do not want to heal. They'd rather just pretend like there's no problem and everything's fine. Just sweep it under the rug and forget about it. Because their disorder, they feel like it works for them. They like how it works for them. Lorraine Diane says he'd obviously been like it all his life, so it was ingrained in him. He knew no other way. Yeah, they've always been this way. So it became normalized over time. They became comfortable with it. And I won't lie, I mean, it is a very difficult thing to accept that your entire life up until that point was all fake. And many of us, we had to do that ourselves. If we were raised in a narcissistic family, I myself, I had to accept that at the age of 29. I had to accept that I was never really loved. No one ever really cared about me. And that's why I was blamed for everything. I was scapegoated. And everyone just denied everything that they did to me. I had to accept that my entire life was fake. It was all a lie. I was in a fantasy. I was in a dream. It's a very difficult thing to accept. But it is something that we should accept. Because then we could potentially live the rest of our lives in peace and experience true fulfillment. And I really want to be here as a role model for you, because I can tell you that since I began the healing process at the age of 29, I mean, I did see therapists and psychologists before that, but that was more with my family blaming me and making me feel like I had something wrong with me. But then when I focused more on what was done to me and healing from that, that's when everything began to change and I began to feel so much better. And most of the time I do feel good. when before I felt awful every day. But now it's gotten to a point where I pretty much never experience any depression. I always feel good. I've always got tons of energy. And it's not that I'm always excited and enthusiastic about it, because it just gets to a point where it becomes your new normal. But yeah, you can heal. Things can improve for you. It just takes time. Irani says it's all about self-importance to the narcissist. It is, because they have a fragile, dysfunctional ego. Then they go to attack your ego, make you feel less important. And then obviously that creates a lot of problems. Because then if you don't feel important, if they've targeted your ego and your self-esteem, then it causes you to do the wrong things, engage in the wrong things, not properly value yourself as you should, and potentially not value other people and other things in the world. It just creates a knock-on effect. It really does. Garden of Love says it also has to do with sex. They suck in that too. Oh, they do. Many of them do. What you will find with narcissists, and especially somatic narcissists, of course, they seem very confident, arrogant, audacious, outlandish, obnoxious when it comes to engaging in sexual activity. But when it actually comes down to it, you can see that they are actually sexually incompetent. They're no good. And of course they're no good, because like with anything else, it's still all about them. They lack empathy. There's no connection, no intimacy, no real love. They're not even concerned about your pleasure, unless it's just for their own validation. And narcissists, they don't really care about sex. It doesn't really do anything for them. It's just a means of power and control. And as Sam Vaknin has mentioned in his videos, they're never really connected to you, not even in sex. They're not connected to you at all. They're just an object to them. They don't even see you. So anyone who thinks they had good sex with a narcissist, reevaluate it. It was all in your mind. It was a shared fantasy that you adopted from them. It had nothing to do with reality. They were not a participant in that. Even if you felt like it felt good, it was essentially just a sex toy, because there wasn't a real person there. And I think it's important to identify that, because once you know and you accept what wasn't actually good, what wasn't actually real, then in a future relationship with someone who's not highly narcissistic, you can then experience real love, real intimacy, a true connection, and have a good sex life, instead of just settling for a fantasy, just a garbage sex life with a narcissist, because that's really what it is. And it's just an awful feeling to be sexually involved with a narcissist. And pretty much in every situation, especially it's typically from the devaluation phase onwards, they then withhold sex from you. Because of course, without the love bombing, without the shared fantasy, you're going to wake up, and if you're having sex with them, then you're going to realize how boring it is. Now, typically, it's going to be very passionate after you have a disagreement with someone. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, without the fantasy, it's just nothing there. And that's why the only time that it may be good after the devaluation phase is when they come back in and they love bomb you again, when they hoover you. If you fall for the shared fantasy again. So the only time it's ever going to seem good is if you're in the shared fantasy. If you're susceptible to their manipulation, and that's only because you're just imagining it in your own mind. It's just your own mind. It's not actually anything that's happening outside of you. But yeah, I've done a few videos on that already, of how it feels to be sexually involved with a narcissist. It's just not a good experience. It's a horrible experience. And typically that's why they end up blaming you and shaming you. Because as we know, that's what they do. When they're no good, they shift the blame onto you and they shame you for it. Nonya says, so it's not a normal thing for them to track you. I can't take the GPS off or he will flip out. Actually, especially in this day and age, it's very normal for a narcissist to be tracking you. It's extremely common these days. I've seen news reports about it, so many articles, it's on YouTube. There's videos with millions of views talking about it. How narcissists, they put spyware on your phone. They're watching your internet browsing, your internet history remotely from their own device, and watching you on GPS. They may also be able to see you through your camera on your device, whether it's on your phone, laptop, or even your television. They could even hack into the security cameras at your own home if they have the right connections. And they can listen to your microphones. And some narcissists will even install pinhole cameras in your home. And this isn't anything new. They've had the ability to do this for potentially the last few decades. And these days it's very common because now this technology, these devices are very affordable. And you could just do a Google search, just type for anything to do with spy equipment, tiny microphones, tiny cameras, hacking devices. It's not even expensive. So many narcissists are getting into this now because, of course, they're very jealous, they're very possessive and controlling. And it solves a problem for them. It provides a solution for them to control their jealousy and, of course, their anger and rage as well, and their loss of control. So it's just a means to manage their own insecurity. So definitely be very cautious that they may be tracking you on your phone, your GPS, they may put a tracking device on your car, they may do all sorts of things. And that's another thing I've seen as well. I've seen some disgusting news stories where people put these, again, these pinhole cameras, they put them in public toilets, behind the toilets. So let's imagine I'm sitting on a toilet right now, and they'll put the pinhole camera somewhere at the back here on the side, so that when you're about to sit down, you pull down your underwear, you sit down, and then when you get back up, they have a good view of your rear. And also I've seen news stories about how they place these pinhole cameras in change rooms as well. And of course these cameras are linked to the pervert's device. And some of them may even upload these videos to porn websites. And also even in public hotel rooms. So you may book a hotel room, and sometimes they may install pinhole cameras in the ceiling, usually at the corner of the room, or also it may work through a camera on the television. So these are all things to be aware of. And if you go onto a porn website, I'm not encouraging you to do that, but if you're curious about it, and you type in a spy camera, pinhole camera, changing room toilet, you will see all sorts of videos where people have actually installed these devices and recorded that. And there's been news stories about it. It's meant to be quite common in Asian countries, I believe Japan especially. So yeah, I've done a lot of research about all of these things, because one thing I'm really fascinated about is people who are perverted sexually, rapists, voyeurs, people who seem to enjoy non-consensual activities. So it's fascinated me because for me, the best part about being involved with someone is that they want me and that they're interested in me. Of course, there's a lot of perverts, a lot of sickos, weirdos out there, and that's what they like to do. They like to stalk you, track you, watch you, trying to engage in non-consensual activity with you. And it really just comes down to self-esteem issues. Calm Race T says, same with video games, you disconnect so much. Yes, I've noticed that as well. Movies, video games, it does cause you to disconnect from yourself. And especially after dealing with a narcissist, we need to focus on connecting back to ourselves. Because a big part of the trauma of the abuse is that while being with a narcissist, we disconnected from ourselves. And I believe that can be quite harmful to us. I'm not stressing, says the video games I play don't disconnect, but inform about narcissist. I'm not advocating against just cutting out video games and movies. You know, of course, if watching a movie late at night with some popcorn and a vegan hot dog, if that makes you feel good, if that makes you feel comfortable, if it helps you to relax at night before you go to sleep, then why stop? Of course, continue with that. As long as it's not something that interferes in a negative way with your daily life, and it's not addictive, it's not something you're doing all of the time, then why not? I mean, of course, there can be some benefits to watching movies and playing video games. With video games especially, it improves hand-eye coordination. And I often play some brain puzzles on my phone because it can help to improve our learning, memory and focus, which can be negatively impacted by narcissistic abuse. So just playing brain puzzles and maybe certain video games as well, it can help to regrow certain parts of the brain and to improve our neurocircuitry. So of course, yes, there can be a benefit to certain video games especially. But I would be careful with games that are overly violent, and movies as well. It can desensitize you, it can normalize it, and it could potentially be traumatic. Horror movies with ghosts, that may not be so bad. But when you're watching gory movies like Saw, or what's the other one? Just any movie that revolves around extreme violence, humiliation, degradation. I believe that the reason why people watch those types of things is a result of low self-esteem. It could be the result of abuse, whether it's from a parent or a relationship partner, and I actually went through a phase like that myself. As a teenager, I would watch a lot of horror movies that were very violent and revolved around humiliation, degradation. And I think it's because that was taught to me. That's how I was treated as a child. So I really just went into a lot of bad things there that were taught to me, because that's how I was treated. I was treated violently, and I was degraded and humiliated. So yeah, I think, movies and video games are good in moderation. Even horror movies, I think a bit of fear now and again, that can be healthy. But anything too violent, anything too degrading or humiliating people, anything like that, I think is best to avoid. It's very unhealthy. Derry says, you were my second notice of not content. Did you do a faceless channel for a while first? Yes, when I first began this channel, I didn't show my face until about 2 years in my live videos. And I would have said before that I was quite shy, but I wasn't really shy. I was just disconnected from myself as a result of the abuse and trauma. Because when you're connected to yourself, you will feel confident, and then you won't feel so shy. So yeah, I didn't actually show my face for about 2 years when I first began this channel. Yankee Tomato says he would say he's going to work, but he wasn't. He was on the computer. Lots of smashing up opiate pills, getting high and watching porn. Yeah, all of these things. I mean, when it comes to excessively drinking alcohol, using drugs, pornography, self-harm, excessive shopping, gambling, these types of things, it's the result of low self-esteem. They don't accept themselves. So people who are addicted to these things, and of course I said excessive shopping and gambling, or excessive use of whether it's video games, pornography, or even sexual activity as well, excessive amounts of these things, it's the result of low self-esteem. So when you see people who are hypersexual, that's low self-esteem. If it's in moderation, then it's fine, and it can be healthy. I mean, of course, it's good to have a good sex life, and even masturbation, that could be a part of that as well, in moderation. But if a person is turning down sexual activity for masturbation, then that doesn't sound healthy at all. Lorraine Down says you have to get them out of your life. They're out of your mind. No matter how long it takes, you will get there. yeah, you should get them off your minds, and gradually it takes time to stop ruminating about them. The best way to do that is to put the focus back on yourself and what you need. Focus on what makes you feel good. Focus on your purpose, your healing journey, and recognize that focusing on them isn't going to make you feel better. And what also can help is to recognize the bigger picture. So this one narcissist that you were dealing with, that's not the be all and end all. Dr. Ramani says 1 in 6 people are narcissists, maybe 1 in 5 in cities. So narcissists are everywhere, as psychologist Ross Roseberg has said. So start to generalize it more when you're watching these videos. Don't just think about one narcissist. Think about all of them as a collective, and continue to educate yourself. Continue to develop the awareness of them, because honestly, the narcissists you're dealing with now, they're not going to be the last one you're dealing with. You're going to encounter other ones. Even if you have strong boundaries and you don't let one get in a relationship with you, you're going to encounter them in your work life. Maybe when you go to a store, the narcissist could be your boss. They're going to be there. They're everywhere in this world. You're not going to get away from them. So when you're watching these videos, as you begin to progress on your healing, you can begin to generalize it more and make it more about the collective of narcissists. And then by doing that, it helps you to detach from it more as well. Faith Lacroix, makeup artist, says nothing is impossible. The word itself says I'm possible. Life quote. I like that one. And it's true. I mean, people used to say all things were impossible before. They used to say it was impossible for planes to fly, for man to go to the moon. And now we've accomplished those things. So who knows what else we could accomplish in the future. It all begins with that belief. Maria Holmes says, yes, a city where you have to get an MR scan to see if you have normal empathy. I don't think we even need to have that technology. All we have to do is just tell them that we have the technology to check if you have normal empathy. And of course, many narcissists will just refuse to do the test. But I myself, I would like to check that. I do feel like I have good empathy. Of course, being targeted by narcissists, it can affect that. As Dr. Ramani says, if you don't have any empathy coming in, you're not going to have so much empathy coming out. So that could be an issue sometimes, and of course I've noticed it in my own experience where I haven't been so empathic towards people because I didn't have any empathy coming in. And essentially it's like, if you're injured, if you're hurt, let's say, I know it's a strange scenario, but It's hypothetical. Imagine if a tiger ripped off your leg and someone else is hurt. It's kind of difficult for you to worry about them because it's like your leg has just been ripped off. So you've got to take care of yourself first. You have to be okay. You have to be comfortable before you can then have the capacity to worry about someone else. And that's how it is with narcissists. They refuse to go within and take care of themselves. And perhaps that's why they can't have empathy for us. Because they use other people to take care of them. Deborah Evans says, once spyware is on your phone, I've always wondered if military-grade spyware transfers to your new phone. Yes, I think there is a way for them to transfer the spyware from one phone to the next. I'm not sure how exactly. And this can be outside of SIM cards as well. But there is a way for them to transfer it. But in all honesty, it just enables them to continue and to become more addicted, and it's self-destructive. When they're spying on you, when they're watching you, when they're tracking you, it damages them more than it affects you. And this is how, when we look at interrogators, police officers, I mean, just have a chat to an interrogator or a police officer and ask them what's been their experience from spying on people, observing them. Even though, yes, I mean, they tend to deal more with criminals. But anyway, with them, it's very traumatic to to break those boundaries with someone and to have to invade their personal life. That's a traumatic experience. And this is what these narcissists are doing when they're spying on you, when they're breaking these boundaries. And for them to do that, they're disconnected from themselves. And they're harming themselves by doing that. So it's not such a positive experience for them. and it does create an addiction. And especially you have to think of it in a way where even police officers and interrogators, when they're speaking to the victims, it's a very traumatizing experience for them. And with a narcissist, they've caused harm to you, and then they're watching you, they're spying on you, and then they're absorbing all of that stress, all of that trauma. And as clinical studies show, a bully is at a 10 to 25 times risk of developing a psychiatric condition than their own victims. So it's far more damaging for them. John Tracy says, upskirting, too weird. Yeah, that was, I think that was a thing back in the 90s. I remember there was a scene in one movie, I think it was called Splash. There was a scene of an upskirting in that movie. And I think that's quite common these days as well. Just thinking off the top of my head from what I've seen in all the reports and articles that I read and all the news stories. But especially these days with the phones, I mean, all they have to do is just stand behind someone in a line and just put the phone down a little bit underneath someone's skirt, and then they get a good view under there. Always something that was difficult for me to understand, how someone could find pleasure in things that are non-consensual, or in a situation where the other person is unaware. It's just the strangest thing to me. But this is what narcissists do. And of course it's been done to me on many occasions where I didn't consent to something, in situations that were sexual and some that were not as well. And that was the most confusing thing for me. That was what really just baffled my mind. It's like, why would you want to engage in this? Why would you want to do this when I'm not interested in that? But this is just what they do. And it seems that they like it more when you don't want it. As I spoke about in a past video, where if you imagine a victim is dealing with a rapist, it seems that the victim's resistance to it is then what causes the rapist to persist. And maybe if the victim just went along with it, let go of the resistance, and just acted as though, okay, yes, I'm attracted to you, let's do it, then maybe the rapist would back down. I would no longer desire to be engaged in it, because I think a lot of this is really about power and control rather than sexual attraction. So although they may use sexual means, they're really just trying to obtain power and control. And Sam Vaknin mentioned this in a recent video about sadism, and how the sadists, they're not really interested in sex at all. They're more focused on the power and control. But that's a big thing with a lot of people these days. It's all about power and control. It's difficult to find a relationship, a connection, where people can just see each other as equals and not feel the need to have power over the other person. And honestly, I think those are the best relationships. Those are the best connections, when people do see each other as on the same level, rather than feeling like they have to gain power. But then of course that's how it is with these types of people. They choose people who they believe are better than them, people who they feel like they don't deserve, and they have low self-esteem. So then they're going to have that power. When you have high self-esteem and you do feel deserving as a result of the work that you've put in, and you don't feel the need to have power over anyone. You feel self-empowered, and you want other people to empower themselves. Nala's been resting all of this time while I've been filming this. I think she enjoys the sound of my voice. She has no idea that she's live on YouTube. I don't know if it's acceptable for me to be filming you in here, Nala, because you're not consenting to be live on YouTube. I'm sure she doesn't mind. She's not embarrassed. Here's the view of the city. All right. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, please give me a thumbs up down below. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit subscribe, click all notifications, so that you will be notified when I upload a new video, or when I go live in the future. And donations are greatly appreciated, no matter how small. You're welcome to donate through my PayPal. It's paypal.me/Narc Survivor. And I am available for one-on-one coaching, which you can book on my website. It's narcsurvivor.co.uk. And follow me on Instagram. I will be uploading my hike earlier today to my stories where I got stuck in the storm. You could see me getting drenched in rain, and then luckily I managed to escape from the jungle. So yeah, follow me on Instagram, Narc Survivor YouTube. See you on there. And I'll talk to you in another one very soon.